The following is for informational purposes only. For medical advice, please see a medical professional.
Welcome to Staying Alive with Margaret and Susy. Today, the topic that we're covering is alcohol. We want to talk about alcohol because we'd be remiss if we skipped over alcohol and its effect on healthy aging. And yet we want to be sensitive about this topic because there are a variety of personal opinions on whether any amount of alcohol is safe or not. How do we decide if we're a problem drinker or not? We're not covering those topics. We don't want to give you our personal opinion in this episode. We're not going to even tell you what we do or why we do it because it's a personal and sensitive topic for many. Today, we want to present the most current scientific research on alcohol and its effects on our bodies. And we want to present the science to you so that you can make the most informed decision for yourselves based on your personal health and medical concerns. And it's interesting that there's new longitudinal research study that just come out in the last couple of years that looked at over 12 million individuals. It was a huge NIH study, and it's being talked about a lot here where I live, UCSF, at Harvard, at Stanford. All of the major influential medical schools are talking about the significance of this new study. And in this new study, what they did was they found in the past that there'd been confounding data that suggested that there was some health promoting behaviors in drinking small amounts of alcohol. And then they were finding that wasn't true. They didn't know why. So they redid the research. And what they found is that in previous studies, they had included in the non-drinking cohort many people who had other factors that included maybe they just quit drinking, maybe they had a health issue, maybe their parents had health issues that were highly tied to the morbidity from alcohol. And so there were genetic reasons why non-drinkers were getting various diseases at the same rate as people who drank small amounts of alcohol. And so they had to redo that study in a longitudinal large scale to really find out. And so now what we know is that there really is no health promoting amount of alcohol. It's not that it's unsafe, but it's just not health promoting. We now know that from this updated research. And so Susy and I see alcohol, I think you would agree, Susy, similarly to eating sweets or anything else that we might enjoy at this time of year, especially, that we know need to be ingested sparingly for optimal health. When we look at alcohol consumption and we look at our healthy bodies, we've decided today to cover three main areas: how alcohol affects our hormones, how alcohol affects our gut, and how alcohol affects our brain. And so these are the three areas we're going to cover. And Susy's luckily going to cover most of the science in this. She understands it so well. And just starting out, I know that what I know is that alcohol comes from starch, which is fermented, makes the molecule alcohol, has a different effect on our bodies than anything else we ingest. And there's something about it, it goes straight to the brain or something. But could you explain, Susy,
Sure.
a bit about the metabolism of alcohol?
You know, we've talked in the past about carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and we want to make sure that we let people know again that alcohol is not a nutrient. It is alcohol. It's not carbohydrate, it's not fat, it's not protein. There are some carbohydrates in alcohol, especially beer, wine, and mixed drinks, because you add them. But pure alcohol like vodka, whiskey, they are not a nutrient. They're alcohol. So alcohol, like anything that you eat or drink, goes through your digestive system. And the first thing that happens is as soon as you drink alcohol, it crosses what's called the blood-brain barrier. And that means that it's absorbed and it goes right to the brain. So they say within 5 to 10 minutes of having a drink, it goes to your brain and you start to feel intoxicated, slurred speech, and it goes to the prefrontal cortex, which unfortunately is where people have their decision-making part of their brain. So that can be a problem. As alcohol is further digested and it goes through the gut, it goes to the liver. And in the liver, there are some enzymes that break it down and it becomes acetaldehyde. And unfortunately, the acetaldehyde that the liver breaks it down to is toxic and is a known carcinogen. So that is a problem. After that, it goes out through the bloodstream and into other organs, the kidneys, the pancreas, all those other organs in your system, the lungs, the heart. It can do some damage there as well. So it's important to remember that. Some of it, about 2 to 10% of it, escapes the liver unchanged and ends up in your urine or your sweat, which is why sometimes when people drink, you can smell it on them. Then it goes to the brain as it backs into the bloodstream from the liver. So those metabolites get to the brain and enhance intoxication as well.
Okay, so let's start with the hormones and then go to the gut and then end with the brain. And so you mentioned some organs where hormones are produced. And so tell us about that.
Alcohol is considered an endocrine disruptor. So that means that it impacts the production of hormones throughout your endocrine system. So for instance, in the one of the first ones is cortisol. Now, cortisol is that stress hormone that if you're stressed out, you have heightened levels of cortisol. That's not necessarily good, of course. So when you drink, initially, your cortisol levels go down. So many people drink because they're stressed out. I'm stressed. I'll have a drink. I'll feel better. Initially, you do feel better, but then your cortisol levels bounce back. And that can lead to more stress and anxiety. So that's especially, I think, when people are hungover, that can really bounce us back.
That's the more extreme. But let me just say, I once asked a doctor who I was working with, does any amount of alcohol affect, like what if I'm just drinking one drink a day? And he said, yes, any amount of alcohol affects your hormonal balance.
Yeah, I think
the
other one is are the blood sugar regulating hormones like insulin and glucagon. And so that could be very dangerous for people, especially for people with diabetes, but also for anybody, because you get a drop in blood sugar. And I've heard that is what impacts people's sleep when they've been drinking. Now, I have myself in the past experienced that, where if I have a drink, I wake up in the middle of the night. And it's because your blood sugar, your regulation of your blood sugar with your insulin and glucagon is not stable. And so it's especially dangerous, again, for people with diabetes or even pre-diabetes.
Right.
Yeah. The other hormone that is oftentimes disrupted is estrogen and testosterone, which are the sex hormones. For testosterone, especially, that can impact energy level, mood, fertility, of course. That's a problem. I mean, even women have some testosterone, right? People think of it as the male hormone, but women also have testosterone. The other one is estrogen, and it disrupts estrogen production, which can be a problem for people who are at risk to breast cancer. And in fact, oftentimes
perimenopause too. Don't forget that. And increases
when you're going
flashes,
through PMS, those
flashes.
Hormone regulations are difficult. Let's just put it that way. It's difficult to manage your hormones when you go through menopause. There are a lot of different ways to do it. People do a lot of different things, and some people have an easier time with it than others. But alcohol is certainly not going to help that process. It's also related. That's why alcohol is related to breast cancer, because of the hormone disruption.
Yeah, we now know that many cancers are related to an imbalance of hormones. And we're not going to go into which hormones or what. You can talk to your doctor about that. But keep all this in mind. If you have any condition where you've been told hormones play a role, then think about your alcohol intake.
I mean, There's a lot of different cancers, that are very sad, and anything we can do to help ourselves is always a good idea.
And we just didn't know how much hormones played a role in cancer production until just the last few years.
Yeah, it's a new thing, really, and it's when you get breast cancer, sometimes people after treatment are encouraged to take hormone blockers, and that's got challenges in itself for sure. But it helps keep people from having reoccurrences of cancer sometimes. Yeah.
So should we move on to the gut, or is anything else you want to say?
Sure. Yeah. The interesting thing about alcohol in the gut is I personally suffer from acid reflux. And so I've had firsthand experience with this. Alcohol definitely triggers acid reflux, which is also known as heartburn. But some people don't even have heartburn when they have acid reflux. They don't get that pain, but they have disruptions in their acid production, and it can be uncomfortable, can cause coughing, but it can also cause some pretty serious health problems in your esophagus. So it's something to really take a look at. So it's going to impact all areas of your digestive system, and especially when you think about your gut microbiome.
Yeah, I understand that even one drink of alcohol impacts the microbiome in your gut. So could you review for us what microbiome is? I know
Microbiomes
we
are
did the gut brain episode.
Yeah, please check out our gut brain episode because it was very interesting. Yeah, it's going to impact the production of bacteria because the microbiome are the healthy bacteria that live in our gut. You need healthy impacts of fiber in your diet to set up a good environment for the microbiome to grow. So once you get a healthy gut bacteria going, you don't want to do things that disrupt it. Also, alcohol can cause leaky gut, which causes things to have sort of holes in your gut, which causes all kinds of problems. Yeah. So it's really important to think about what you're doing. Back in the day, I know when my parents were my age and maybe younger, it was all about ulcers. When people would get ulcers and then they would have to quit drinking, So you don't hear as much about that, but that's a bacteria related thing. But, there are a lot of reasons that sometimes people get what's called gout from drinking. Those are all really difficult things to deal with. Yeah.
Wow.
And I've even had someone close to us tell us that alcohol ruined his heart. All part of the system.
Yeah. And then if you're drinking less to improve what's going on in your gut, there's also the added benefit of a lot of times people lose weight. I don't know if it's just the calories or if it's something also going on in the microbiome. People seem to lose weight so much easier if they're not really drinking. Skin looks better.
I think people
hydrated.
Yeah, I think people sometimes have pretty unhealthy habits when they're drinking too. I think that we have a tendency to overconsume certain foods when we're drinking. That's my experience.
Oh, interesting.
And
maybe to drink a little less water too.
Drink less water, and also there are some types of alcohol that have a lot of carbohydrate added to them. There's the mixers that people put in drinks. Beer has a lot of calories, a lot of carbohydrates. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
And I was just thinking, I know that the walls of our intestine become more porous as we age.
That's called leaky gut. Yeah.
And so that's just a normal part of aging that it becomes more porous in our intestines. So I would think that we're more susceptible to some of these things in our gut as we age.
You're more susceptible to so many things related to alcohol. One of my bailiwicks is the risk of falling. We aren't even talking about that really today.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about that also soon in the exercise episode.
Yeah.
So should we move on to the brain then?
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
I mean, that just this idea that alcohol travels to the brain first and the blood-brain barrier. It's like that. That seems like a big deal because as we age, our brains shrink in volume. And the
Mm-hmm.
main thing that affects is our memory, by the way. Like if you notice, oh, my memory's not what it used to be as we're aging, it's because that's the main thing affected in these
Yeah.
shrinking brains we have. Yes, we're just as smart as we ever were, but our brains are shrinking. And unfortunately, alcohol increases the volume loss
Well,
and
also it
uses the
affects the
brain.
neurotransmitters in your brain are affected by alcohol.
Yeah, so tell
So
us about
that's
that. Tell us
that's
about
that's the
that.
biggest problem is that when it acts as a disruptor of neurotransmitters and some of the hormones that are necessary to have a healthy brain. So when you get um, alcohol, there's alcohol related dementia. That's a type of dementia,
Right.
which happens to people who drink too much.
But that's people who drink too much. And today we're just
Right,
covering how is it
right,
affecting the brain day to day in those of us who don't necessarily drink too much, but we're
right.
aging and we're drinking and
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, it impacts things like GABA and the neurotransmitters, things that And I like to think about the fact that first of all, your neurotransmitters are mostly produced in your gut. So when you're drinking too much alcohol, when you don't have a healthy gut, the production of your neurotransmitters is way lessened, right? So then you the sort of double indemnity, you get that going, and then the fact that you've got alcohol in the brain that's disrupting the neurotransmitters. To me, it makes such logical sense. I mean, this is why people act goofy when they drink because it's disrupting the neurotransmitters in your brain. Unfortunately, that to me also could lead to things like depression
yeah, when you
because
mention that, I'm thinking, wow, anybody with mental
Mhm.
health issues,
Yeah,
that's something to think about there.
yeah, for
Mm,
sure,
mhm.
yeah. So it disrupts all those good things that are going on in your brain. Let's face it, we need as much as we can get of our brain. We need to keep it going.
We do. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah. And then
I
and alcohol contains byproducts and
yeah,
toxins that need to
yeah,
be excreted and that
yeah.
affects, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, for sure. And those toxins that are produced in the liver, acetaldehyde, they just go right through your bloodstream and they're affecting all the other things.
Yeah.
So, that can be really detrimental to the brain.
So think about it. Think about how much you're consuming. If you want to cut back or change your relationship to alcohol based on what you know about your family history and
Mhm.
your goals for your health and
Right,
your aging
right.
body, and just
Yeah,
make an informed decision. That's all we're
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
And talk to your doctor if you think you need help around this. And
There's
I
plenty of
hope
ways to
this
get help. Yeah.
has helped you make more informed decisions around alcohol. And that's all I was thinking we would say today. Anything
Yeah,
else you want
yeah.
to talk about?
I don't think so. I think,
Okay.
just
Let's,
make good goals for yourself, and this can be one of them to
yeah.
lessen the amount of alcohol.
And you're
Yeah.
going to be hearing this in the new year when it's coming out. So
Yeah.
I hope this helps you with any New Year's resolution you might be having or not. And Happy New Year. And until next time, we are
Staying
staying
alive.
alive.
You've been listening to Staying Alive with Margaret and Susie. This show is hosted by Margaret Cooley and Susy Hymas. To subscribe to our show, leave a comment or ask a question, please visit stayingalivewithmargaretandsusie.com. Our podcast is available on all major podcast platforms. If you've enjoyed our program, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for listening.